How you doing? Coach Ards here. This is our review for Chapter 6 test. This is on the scientific revolution and the Enlightenment. All right, first of all, we'll talk about the universe, the Ptolemaic universe. Ptolemy, ancient Greek scientist, said that the Earth was the center of the universe. That's called a geocentric universe. Part of the scientific revolution. Revolution means a great change, had a new way of thinking. The scientific revolution came about from lots of new discoveries and because of exploration. Copernicus changed the idea of an Earth-centered universe. Copernicus had a heliocentric universe. That means a sun-centered. He wrote a book in 1543. Kepler built on the work of Copernicus. He used math to support the heliocentric model. He showed elliptical rather than circular orbits. He worked with a guy named Brahe, B-R-A-H-E. Galileo came along. We all know Galileo. He's the one that built his own telescope. The key for Galileo is that he saw stuff on the moon. So he said the moon was made of matter. It wasn't pure orbs of light. So he supported the Copernican theory also. This made the church very angry because the church said that the moon was pure orb of light. They said that the telescope was an instrument of the devil. So they made Galileo face charges in front of the church court called the Inquisition, mostly concerning a book he wrote in 1632. They forced him to recant, and he lived under house arrest until he died. The scientific method is a logical procedure, a procedure that involves a hypothesis. So first you have an observation and questioning, then a hypothesis, then experiment, testing, and then a conclusion. Bacon is considered to have invented the scientific method, also known as the experimental method. Descartes believed that everything should be doubted until it could be proven with logic. Descartes was the philosopher that said, I think, therefore I am. That's the only thing he could be guaranteed that he could guarantee that he was here because he thought. Newton, 1687, Isaac M. Newton, wrote a book about gravity. He did not invent gravity, he just wrote a book about the law of gravity. He continued on the work of Copernicus and others. He said that every object has an attraction to every other object in the universe. That was what gravity was about. There were scientific instruments at this time that came about. The microscope was invented by Janssen in 1592. Torricelli invented the barometer in 1643 that measures atmospheric pressure. Fahrenheit invented the thermometer in 1714, and Celsius built on the thermometer and created a scale for measuring temperature. Galen was an ancient Greek physician, and Vesalius was a new scientific revolutionary physician. Vesalius, starts with a V, dissected human bodies, and he revolutionized the way that we look at medicine when he wrote a book. There was a British doctor named Edwin Jenner. Jenner was known as the father of immunology. He introduced a vaccine to prevent smallpox. Boyle, in 1661 wrote a book. He was known as the father of modern chemistry, and he's known for Boyle's law of gases. To build on the scientific revolution was the Enlightenment Period. The Enlightenment Period was a period of new thinking, and the Enlightenment was a movement that stressed reason and thought. One of the first Enlightenment philosophers in England was Thomas Hobbes. Hobbes talked about a social contract. He said that humans were distrustful, that they were brutish, and Hobbes favored a strong government. Hobbes wrote a book about the social contract. He said that an absolute monarch was the best thing going. Wrote a book called The Leviathan. John Locke came around about 50 years later. An English philosopher said that he stressed several things, that people have the right to overthrow an unjust government. He stressed life, liberty, and property. John Locke's ideas on government influenced our American founding documents, the Constitution as a means of constituting government, and the Declaration of Independence. French philosophers valued reason, nature, and happiness, progress, and liberty. The philosophes was a French word for philosophers. Voltaire was an influential French philosopher. He talked about tolerance of religion and reason. He made enemies for what he said. Montesquieu talked about the separation of powers, very important in our American Constitution. He favored a separation of powers so that one part of the government wouldn't become more powerful than another. Rousseau championed freedom, individual freedom, and direct democracy. He wrote a book in 1762 called The Social Contract, where it is agreement of free people to form a government, also very influential in the forming of our government. Beccaria was an Italian philosopher. He promoted social justice. He wanted to reform the justice system. Mary Wollstonecraft was a predominant writer, and she wanted women's rights. She valued education and promoted education for all women. Remember, the Enlightenment period was a period of secular viewpoints. So people looked at non-religious things to guide achievement. There was an importance of the individual during the Enlightenment period that we still have with us today. The Enlightenment Spread started in a lot of ways in Paris, France, where there were salons. Wealthy women in their salons had gatherings of important, influential philosophers. All right. So these salons were gatherings where these philosophers, Enlightenment philosophers, and intellectuals gathered to talk about Enlightenment philosophy. Now, there was one guy named Diderot, and he compiled an encyclopedia, 1751. The encyclopedia contained all kinds of information, like encyclopedias do, but it also had essays that criticized the French government and the Catholic Church, and they didn't like him for that. Two styles of art, Baroque and Neoclassical. Baroque was fancy, ornate, and grand. Neoclassical was like classy. All right, there was changes in music. They developed classical music at the time. A novel came about at that time. Newspapers and magazines were important. Also, next, we'll talk about some of the rulers. They sometimes referred to as enlightened despots. They embraced Enlightenment ideas and tried to get their countries changed. Frederick the Great of Prussia reformed education, the justice system, and had religious toleration. Joseph II of Austria wanted freedom of the press and freedom of worship. He abolished serfdom, but they reversed it after he died. Catherine the Great, she was an enlightened ruler of Russia. She didn't get very far because her power came through the nobility, but Catherine the Great did expand her empire greatly and got a warm water port in the Black Sea after a war with the Ottoman Empire. On a religious note of the Enlightenment, John Wesley, an English preacher, had a mystical experience in which he realized that God's grace is always there, that everyone is assured the grace of God, that God loves everybody, and he started to he preached in open air fields, and he preached to the middle and lower classes, and he stressed hard work, and he converted people. All right.